Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can find the show online at buildingthefutureshow.com or follow me on Twitter at BuildingShow. You can also find it on iTunes, Stitcher, and YouTube. I'm excited to announce that I am now a brand ambassador for the Business Rock Summit in Manchester, England, April 21st and 22nd, where Steve Wozniak is headlining. More details at business-rocks.com. Welcome back to the show. Today we have David Idell, co-founder and CEO of Croissant. David, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Kevin.
Yeah, no, thanks for being on the show. I think that what you guys are doing is really interesting and very cool. So it's kind of why I wanted to have you on the show.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm honored to be here. I was reading through the past shows, and I'm very honored that you would consider me among the ranks of your other attendees. So, very honored to be here.
No, it's awesome, man. The feeling's mutual. So maybe kind of before we talk about Croissant and whatnot, maybe let's talk about kind of where you grew up.
Sure. So I'm from upstate New York. I grew up my whole life there. I went to college upstate as well in Albany. Shortly after college, I ventured down into the city of New York, and I've been there ever since. Minus a year elsewhere, but mainly. So what I did in college was really computer science.
Okay.
And I actually started with physics, and then I went to computer science because I could just tell it would be more useful for me. So
sure.
I think a lot of people come to that realization. They start out with one major and they end up with a more useful major. Some people don't. I don't know. Anyway.
Sure.
So that's what I did. So I got a job as a consultant in the city for a software consulting firm, and that's kind of where I got a sense for the corporate world. And so, do you want me to go through like my whole story up until now, or I could do it in maybe like a few minutes? Or
yeah, sure. No, it's interesting to me. I'm kind of always fascinated by kind of how people got to where they are currently.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, so in a nutshell, there's a couple of different phases. So I've been out of college now since 2008, and so that was 7 years ago. So I'll talk you through the phases. So phase one was get a job out of college.
Sure. That
went well. That happened around the time of the financial meltdown. So it ended up not working out because of that. So I ended up being let go from that.
What was the job? Was it in technology?
Say again?
What was the job?
It was consulting, and it was like projects with like Java.
Oh, okay,
Java from college. So I was doing that, and then my friend approached me about. It's just crazy thinking about it, looking back. But he approached me about doing online trading. So I kind of got into that for a few years, actually.
That's interesting.
We built a whole algorithm together, and we were working on it, and my friend actually raised money for us to trade. We were like kind of trying to start like a little fund.
Right.
So we were working on that for like a year, and then we raised money for that, and we were trading it, and we were performing like ups and downs. It wasn't, it wasn't really performing very well. It was kind of just like break even at best. And around the time when we were kind of winding it down because it wasn't really working out, I got the idea that we should package it up and sell it as like a desktop application, like this algorithm that we made for sort of predicting the charts. And so we made this thing, and we put it up, and we actually made some sales for a little while. This is about like 2 years after I left my job at this point. Like I was just like trying to make something work at this point, anything. And we were actually able to make some sales, but I don't know, I wasn't a very experienced entrepreneur at that point.
Sure.
I didn't realize how much effort it would take to really get it out there and do the proper marketing and everything. So I just assumed it wasn't going to work out, and I actually went back into the corporate world at that point. Who knows what could have happened with it, but it was fun. I learned a lot. It really upped my skills, and it was my first taste of being an entrepreneur.
Sure.
Nothing compared to now. I mean, now I'm much more serious about it. That was more of like I'm young. I don't really care what I'm doing, but this looks kind of fun, so I'll make it.
No, I think that's
And
awesome
then,
though.
yeah, so it was my first taste of it. And then I got a job, and I worked there for 3 years as a programmer in finance. I worked for
Okay.
an interdealer broker down near Wall Street, and that was quite good. It's, it was nice to make a steady paycheck for once after such a long time of not doing so.
Sure.
Um, so I learned a lot about operations and programming critical systems and finance and just software development in general. And it's like a pretty standard company. And so anyway, so that about 2.5 years into it, like towards the end of my tenure there. So actually, I should rewind. When I first got the job, I was thinking, okay, I like this entrepreneurial thing, but I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm going to get this job for now and make some money while I figure things out, and I'll probably do something entrepreneurial in the future. So that was my mentality going into it.
Okay. No, I think
It
that's
ended
good.
up taking, yeah, yeah. It ended up taking. I'm happy I had that foresight too, because a lot of people don't have that foresight.
No, totally.
I guess
Well,
I'm
and a lot
lucky
of
I
people
thought
get
like that.
stuck in a job, right? Because they think they're
Yeah,
gonna
yeah. They
just
don't.
quit eventually, and then they're just
Mhm.
like, "Oh, money's too good. I'm not quitting."
Yeah, yeah. So I kind of went in with that mind, with the proper mindset of I'm going to do this for 2 years. Luckily, I thought that way. It ended up taking me 3 years, but I was there over 2 years, and then towards the end of that, I was thinking. So I wasn't really thinking about starting a startup. It happened kind of randomly. So what happened was I started going to hackathons
Right.
because a friend told me to check out this thing called General Assembly in New York, if you heard of it. And I started going there and checking out some of their classes just to see what's up in the entrepreneurial community. And there was this talk by like a very experienced CTO or something, and he said, "You should be going to hackathons." So I was like, "Okay." And
It's
so I
good
started doing
advice.
that, and yeah, this is like almost 3 years ago now. He said that. It's still relevant today. I
Sure.
think it's still a great thing to do if you haven't been doing it. Um, so I started doing that, and I started to make some side projects, nothing too crazy. And then summer of last year, 2014, I went with some friends to a hackathon, and we made a prototype for something that we thought would be cool in our corporate jobs.
Okay.
Um, and that's where Perky was born, my last company.
Right.
So Perky was basically a way for employers to give perks to their employees. It was kind of like Groupon for the enterprise. Like they'd be able to subsidize deals for their employees.
Okay.
So we made it. We prototyped it at that hackathon, and then we worked on it for a while. And I started to get more serious, and I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to quit my job finally and do the entrepreneurial thing that I've been hoping to do.
Sure.
And so I quit my job and started working on it full time.
Did
And then
you?
a few
How
months
did you
later, we
support
launched it.
yourself?
Because one of the things that I went in with into my job, thinking that I'd be quitting in a few years, was that I would have to save a lot of money. So
Right. Okay.
I did save most of my paycheck every month. Actually, I did not live like I was making the money I was making. So I was lucky enough to be making a nice paycheck, but I was living as if I was still an entrepreneur from
Right.
like back before I got the job. Like luckily that experience enforced in me the lifestyle of saving money. So that's one of the keys to being successful: saving money beforehand,
Sure.
planning ahead.
So is
So
there like
yeah.
when you mention this to other people, is there kind of you're like you should save a year, 2 years, 6 months? Like is there kind of like, or what have you found, I guess, in
Um,
your experience?
just kind of realized how much money you're spending. Like for example, I was using Mint while I was at my job,
Yeah.
Mint.com, and I was doing the analysis of how much I was making and how much I was spending, and I figured if I save X amount of money every month, I can survive for X years
Okay.
coming out. And
Interesting.
not gonna lie, I've had some help from the parents,
Fair.
so that helps a little bit too. They're luckily I have that support system.
Were you
I'm
living
grateful
at
for that.
home during this time, or you were out on your own?
No, no, I've been out on my own this whole time
Okay.
renting. When I was doing my entrepreneurial stuff before I got that job, I was living at a friend's house for a year,
Okay.
so I did save some money that way. But so that was kind of fun. But yeah, I was living very frugally, I guess you could say.
No, that's great
Um,
advice. I think so many people don't think about that, right?
yeah. Yeah, so that was a big part of what's gotten me to where I am now, I'd say. So then we were working on Perky end of last year, about a year ago, and we launched it in January. And we did okay. We got some customers and everything. But it was, it's my first taste of like real entrepreneurship. Like I was like really trying to go hard and make this a company now that I'm a little more experienced. But, the first time around, now, it's probably not going to be your successful one, as you probably heard everyone say, like, you fail a lot first.
Yeah.
So it's definitely true.
No,
I
or
wouldn't say
you're
it's a
like an
failure, but,
overnight.
like,
You're an overnight success, but it took you 10 years, that kind of thing.
yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't like a failure. It was just like it could have been better in a lot of ways, and we learned what our shortcomings were, especially in terms of like marketing and finding product market fit.
Sure.
I made the mistake. It wasn't like a total mistake, but like I kind of built most of the system and launched it before doing a whole lot of testing on the potential customer.
That's a really good point, right? It makes sense to launch early and as quick as possible so you can actually get that feedback instead of going too far down the road.
Yeah, and you'll see what I learned apply to Croissant when we talk about that. But I did most of it. I thought of it in my head, I should say we thought of it and built it and got it out. And we were doing some user testing before we launched, but we didn't really take it very seriously. We didn't try too hard to make sales before we built the product, and I think some people should try to do that.
Right. That's good advice.
A sense of what your customer is looking for. Yeah, like when you actually try to make the sales before you build it, it can make a big difference.
Sure. So how big was your team for that app?
It's the same for us, for Croissant and for Perky.
Okay.
We were all working in corporate jobs. We made Perky because we all corporate jobs we can relate to, wanting more perks and cooler perks. We thought I thought it'd be great if our employers would sponsor it and everything. Yeah. I mean, it might still work. The idea is still out there. We could do something with it. It's still running. We just, kind of put it on the back burner just because it's not there yet. There's still a lot of work to be done to get that product market fit for that.
Sure.
And this idea for Croissant came up, and it was a much better opportunity. And I'll get into that. So yeah, we were working on Perky. We were live with it. We were pursuing it aggressively. We got into an accelerator program. I don't know if you know, but we're in the Co-Found Harlem Accelerator up in Harlem here.
Okay.
And about a week into the accelerator, another hackathon came up, the TechCrunch hackathon, which is pretty big here in New York.
Sure, I can imagine.
Yeah, it's like 400 attendees and everything.
Oh, wow.
I've went the past 3 years. I always have fun every time. The first time, actually, the first time I was there in 2013, I randomly met a guy there. I just went with an open mind. I was like, hey, I want to meet someone and make something with someone. And I did, and we won a little prize, so it was kind of cool.
So how long was this? How many days was the hackathon?
It's just 24 hours.
So you met somebody there that you didn't know, and then you built something, and you won something within like 24 hours?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
One of the sponsors, yeah. It was kind of cool. It was like a $250 like Amazon gift card, I think. It was kind of awesome. I mean, it's just silly, but we made this silly app that is like vocabulary app or something that uses one of the sponsors of the hackathon. Like, so the sponsors get prizes.
Okay.
And one of the sponsors was Pearson, who has like a dictionary. You can like look up dictionary terms.
Right.
They made this like vocabulary learning app that like I don't know. I don't remember what it does. And then I went with some friends in 2014 last year, and even then we met some more people and we did something with them and we won another prize.
Oh, wow.
So that was pretty cool too. That was another, like, we kind of went with the sponsors of the event and tried to make something for their platform. But this past year, we started looking to the accelerator, and things with Perky were going okay, but it was, it was a little morale was a little low, I would say. So we thought we'd get our minds off it and try something new.
Okay.
And so we went to this hackathon, and while we were there, we thought of, like, the issues we've had with working on Perky. Like, we thought about how hard it was to I shouldn't say it was really like Nisha's, our co-founder Nisha idea. She gave me this idea back in, like, January. She's like, I wish I could, like, book a seat at, like, a coffee shop, because, like, because we always work at coffee shops when we were working on this thing, and there was no, like, easy way to do it. It was always, like, a struggle, especially in New York. New York is, like, tough with coffee. It used to not be this way too. It's like only the past, like, year or two I've seen, like, more and more people taking up seats with, like, picking up the outlets.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, just more people are getting into that lifestyle. So that's kind of like the precursor here.
Yeah, it's kind of trendy to be like a startup co-founder that works at a coffee shop, right? And some people are actually doing it, and others are just kind of wannabes.
Yeah, it used to just be, like, bloggers and writers, and that was, like, the coffee shop people. But now, like, everyone's doing it.
Sure.
So that's part of the drive here. So she had this idea to book a seat in the coffee shop. So that was what we prototyped for the hackathon.
Okay.
And one of the sponsors was this company, Gimbal, and they had these Bluetooth beacons. And so we integrated that into the prototype. And so we had this thing where you had these beacons triangulating your position in a coffee shop, and you can, like, order coffee to your seat.
That's awesome.
And the coffee shop could, like, charge by the hour, so, like, they can still monetize off the people who don't really want to buy anything. They just want to, like, work at the coffee shop.
Right.
So that's kind of what we threw together. So after the hackathon, we didn't win anything this time around, which is fine. It's still great. Like, we got a chance to present. But what's cool, and what also helped us decide to go with it, actually, was right after we presented it on stage at TechCrunch, because what they do is they give everyone 60 seconds to present their hack to, like, the audience of, like, who's ever there, like 500 people or so.
Right.
So it's quite thrilling. So right after that presentation, one of the TechCrunch writers who was there asked me for an interview. So I was like, oh, it's, like, some random interview. This will be fun. So I just, like, talked about what we made and like what it does and the team and everything. And 20 minutes later, she put up this long article on TechCrunch.
Oh, wow.
I was like, what?
That's awesome, though.
I had a video of my presentation. It's on our website. You can see it. If you click on the TechCrunch link on getcroissant.com, you'll see my presentation and the write-up she did. And it was totally random. I was like, oh, that's awesome.
But I think that's important to mention. Like, if you're not out there kind of networking and going to these hackathons and kind of being part of the community, this stuff won't happen to you, or the chances of it happening to you are pretty small, right? And so you kind of, I love, and this is kind of why I wanted to have you on the show. Like, you said earlier that you're kind of honored and whatnot, but, like, this is what I want to stress. Like, I could just, talk about this stuff, but hearing from people like yourself that have done it and been through it, and you can tell the listener, like, here, like, look, I went to this hackathon, I got asked kind of randomly to be in this interview with TechCrunch, and now it kind of blew up, right? And I think that's super important to reinforce to people, that you kind of need to, like, get yourself out there and, like, make it happen for yourself.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So coming from a background in technology, I didn't really put stress on, like, networking or really going to events at all. And then it was, like, really just, like, the past year I've started doing that very aggressively, and that has paid off. It takes some time, but you meet the right people. You learn what events are good, and you never know, something like this might happen to you.
Sure. So how often would you say you go to these, like, hackathons or networking events?
I haven't been to a hackathon since the one in May with Croissant.
Okay.
we might go to, I don't know, I might go to another one. We'll see. But yeah, before I was like, getting some traction here, it's good to go to these things. But how often?
Like, do you go to other networking events currently, or not really?
Yeah,
Now that you
yeah.
kind of have, okay,
No, nowadays I mean I don't go to hackathons, but I go to like conferences and
right.
actually a little secret with conferences, you should try to volunteer.
Oh, totally.
The past two conferences we reached out for volunteer positions and we either got like a discount ticket or like
That's actually really good advice.
A couple $100. Yeah, I did not. That's I got to credit Nisha again on that one. She thought to do all that. She's good with that.
That's good. No, but I love that. Like, you're right, because they're always like, it's pretty hard for them to, maybe pay you, but if you volunteer, they can easily print another pass, right, with your name on it. So that's actually really good advice.
Yeah, and I meet all the so if I work the table, for example, I meet everyone coming into the conference.
Totally.
So I can say hi to everyone. So it's like already a warm introduction if I like walk around during the conference and start talking to people.
And then even at the bars after, the conference that night, people are like, "Hey, you're the guy," Yeah, that's interesting. So just kind of along the same lines, like you go to these networking events and you kind of have all these ways of networking. Is there any other ways that you've kind of found that have worked for you in kind of either networking a little bit or kind of, because I think a lot of people find it awkward.
Yeah, I still find it awkward myself.
I think everybody does.
Yeah,
I still find it awkward.
I was reading a book about this recently. I think it's called like Do Over or something. But he makes a good point in the book, and I agree with it. It's just going with the right mindset that you're just there to have fun and to meet people. Don't go in with the mindset that that you want to like find the right person to do business with. It's more like just go in looking for friends kind of thing, or not even. Yeah,
that is good advice.
Friends. So I forget that sometimes.
Sure.
But another thing, for example, at a conference at that bar afterwards, like I met someone who runs a pretty big newsletter in New York, and they liked our company and they wanted to put us on the newsletter. So that got us some nice traction. They just like put us up on the newsletter. So this is an example of what could happen.
Sure. Well, I think the other thing too is I've even found personally, if you're not in one of those big hubs like New York or whatnot, you should try to go to a conference or two, in one of those bigger cities, maybe once a year or once every few years, and, try to get involved with some of that stuff, right? Because you're right, that's where the big hubs are there for a reason. And it's kind of got me where I've gotten in my career just by, reaching out to people and going to conferences and just kind of constantly networking with people outside of, even my country in a lot of cases.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and another thing sorry, what were you going to say?
No, go ahead.
In terms of online networking for like if you're not in a hub, another thing that we do, my co-founder does this a little more than me, is just reach out to people on LinkedIn. Like
totally.
It could just be a cold reach out.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
yeah.
I've done that. I just broke 12,000 LinkedIn connections, so I've done that for probably like 6 years. That has been probably the most important thing I've ever done career-wise. Is it started off as kind of a joke, and I've mentioned this on shows before, but again, I think it's to stress it. It's like you reach out to all these people, and like, some people don't write back. Some people, nicely tell you where to go. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because there's always going to be people that, aren't interested or whatnot. Like, I'm not selling them anything. I just say, hey, like, let's connect. I think what you're doing is pretty cool. I'm not like saying, hey, buy this or that, because I don't have anything to sell. But, I think that's super, super important. And it's like, it's gotten me connections globally that have been instrumental in finding really good guests for the radio show.
Nice.
Well, that's awesome. How you and I met, right? Or was it Twitter? I can't remember. It's one of the two.
I don't remember. It was a few months ago.
Yeah, but
especially online.
Yeah.
In person.
I think it was Twitter, but it doesn't really matter. It's social media, right?
Yeah. I the thing with like the LinkedIn stuff, I actually find that more awkward than in-person interactions.
Really?
I don't know, for some reason.
Why
like
is
a little
that?
Weird. I don't know. Because when I'm in person, I'm just like joking around, laughing, but it's like hard to convey all that like online. That's a skill I got to work on. Like I only started doing this recently. The
That's
whole cold reach out on LinkedIn.
That's actually
So
like fascinating to me because I'm the total opposite. Like I feel completely awkward talking to people in person where I was like, "Oh, this is perfect. I can network online and I don't
yeah,
have
yeah,
to worry about that." But it's interesting that, you kind of have the reverse. And I think the point I guess to stress here is that you need to figure out what's more comfortable for you, and then obviously you need to push yourself out of your comfort zone and kind of do the other one as well, but at least start off with the one that is least uncomfortable. And if it's in person, go in person. If it's online, go online, and then work on the other
yeah,
one.
yeah. Totally true.
Sure, man. So maybe let's talk about kind of what Croissant is, and I know you kind of loosely talked about how you started it and kind of came up with the idea, but do you want to maybe kind of cover that again and just
Yeah,
kind of go a little bit deeper into that?
yeah. I'll say what it is now.
Sure.
So right now we have I think 22 spaces now. We've partnered with 22 co-working spaces in New York City.
Awesome.
And we kind of package it up so that all you have to do is buy one membership and you can bounce around between the different spaces. So a little more about it. You basically sign up. We have two plans, $99 a month for 40 hours and 5 guest hours, and then $2.99 a month if you want to get unlimited hours and 20 guest hours.
Okay.
And so once you're a member and you're signed up, you can basically show up at the space, click check-in on the app,
Right.
and they'll tell you where to sit, or they're basically a hot desk, open format desk. You sit down, get to work, and then when you're ready to leave, you just click check out. And so
Okay.
you can do that as long as you have hours remaining in your membership.
Okay.
And also you have guest hours, so you can check in, and then you can have a meeting. You can invite a friend to sit next to you, so you have 5 hours to do that. Per month.
Okay. And then do you guys just take a cut of that to monetize, or how do you guys monetize this?
Yeah, I mean, we have different agreements in place with different spaces,
Okay.
but yeah, we take a small portion of that as our revenue. So
Okay. So you mentioned New York City. Are you guys kind of expanding outside of that?
someday we hope to. Right now, since we're so young, obviously we've been live since just July, so
Oh, yeah, wow.
this day, yeah, like 5 months.
Yeah, but that's
So,
awesome. You already have 22 co-working spaces in New York City, and you've only been live for 5 months. That's pretty impressive.
yeah. I mean, I have to attribute that to my co-founder Zoltan. He actually landed all those partnerships.
So did he just go
like
cold call them, or how did you guys or how did he land those partnerships?
Some of the spaces we had a previous relationship with from
Okay.
our last company, Perky, but some of them were just cold visits.
Right.
He basically hustled really hard for a couple months there, and just got a bunch of people. He just pitched it, and
Oh, I think that's
got
awesome.
some people. Yeah. Actually, so what we initially did back in May, like I was talking about, our prototype was coffee shops. And my initial thought was this would be great if I could co-work in coffee shops and restaurants.
Right.
And that's still like I really want to do that at some point. I think the idea is a little before its time, but that'd be really cool, I think. So what we tried doing was pitching it to coffee shops and restaurants, but it was very difficult for them to. Maybe it's on us, like we're just don't have the skills to convey it well enough, but and maybe it's just before its time. But
Sure. But I also like the fact
they
that you're
weren't really-
trying a bunch of different angles, right? And until like
Mhm.
you found one that kind of worked. Like, okay, well, yeah, we'd like this, and maybe we'll still try that in the future. But right now the co-working space seems to make a lot more sense right now.
Yeah. A lot of things that'll make you. One of the things that'll make you successful is catching trends. They
Sure.
say. So if you can get on a good trend, such as co-working is like a trend.
Yeah.
So we're kind of like riding that trend for now.
Sure.
So we started out pitching these coffee shops and restaurants, but they weren't really going for it. So we randomly started pitching co-working spaces just because they seemed like it would fit them, and then it just clicked right away. Like they got it, they already understood it, and it made sense for them. So they were totally on board.
Sure.
And so we've been steadily increasing the number of spaces ever since July.
No, that's awesome, man. So if I want to kind of get started with Croissant, like how do I go about doing it?
It's pretty simple. You just go to getcroissant.com, click sign up, your name, email, which membership option you'd like, and you pay. That's it. You're a member.
Awesome. No, that's wicked.
Yeah. You get like a welcome email and some like the contact information for us, and like our co-founder Zoltan primarily does like the customer service, so you'll talk with him. We also meet a lot of the members too, because we go to the spaces ourselves, and we run into a lot of our members. So it's, we're trying to build a community.
That's interesting.
So step one is try to meet the members, get a feel for what they need from the platform.
Sure.
Some features have arisen from doing stuff like that, like the guest feature. That was like one of the first things that popped up. People are like, I gotta hold meetings, and
Sure.
we're like, well, we could make a conference room booking system, but it's a little expensive for our members. Looks like a way to make everyone happy here, get the spaces paid a little bit, and get our members and their guests inside. So that's where we came up with the guest feature.
Interesting. So do you tell your members you're going to be at, this co-working space if they want to kind of have a talk with you, or do you reach out to them, or is it just kind of a little bit more random?
It's a mix of different things. So
Okay.
Some of it's random. Some of our members who we've reached out to have gotten back to us, and we'll arrange like a meeting for like user testing and just to ask questions on what they need. What are their needs?
Okay,
So
that's really
helped us.
cool.
Yeah.
So do you?
Yeah, a lot of good advice is just talk to your users. Yeah, I'm sure you know.
So if I'm using the app, does it tell me kind of who else is at that co-working space, or do you guys have like little profiles on people that say, this, or like eventually you want to maybe match people together and say, hey, you guys are building something that could, integrate well or something? Is that in the cards? Just
not yet.
No.
I want to do that though. I want to add that exact thing. We've been debating what types of things should be in the app. One of them, because we want to enable people to have offline meetings.
Sure.
This is really just a tool for getting your work done, getting into a community of like-minded people, and that's one of those things that we want to add. So we want to add features to the app that enable people to easily connect with other people on the platform and the space. It's not live yet, but it's in the cards.
Sure.
Among other things. So.
No, that's awesome. No, I think that's cool. So, is there anything else that you guys want to talk about that you're kind of working on now, or kind of any other struggles or almost successes that you guys are currently facing?
So struggles. One of our biggest struggles right now is, I guess you could say, education, because they're trying to educate people who come to our websites, either through social media or just SEO, like people looking for a co-working space. A lot of people kind of glaze over the site. They don't really understand it. If you listen to a radio show like this, you'll understand it because I explain everything. But people who don't know us or know what we're about, they kind of don't understand it. And so we're currently trying to make it better. I think this is like a lot of the issue that a lot of startups have is it's hard to make people understand what you're doing. It's like a new concept or whatnot. So, some people think, oh, do I have to book a seat ahead of time? And the answer is no. Like, it's not like too clear. But, like, how do you say that in a nice way on the website? It's things like that is what we're kind of.
Yeah, it's kind of like these one-off cases, right? Because, like, for example, I don't live in New York City, so if I came to New York City, can I just load the app and say, like, where's the closest place that you guys use, and is there a seat available? Can I just go book that? Like how do you explain that to somebody, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure it out.
Sure. No, it's tricky.
So we're playing with it. Lots of testing involved, getting lots of feedback from people. Talk to as many people as possible, like people who've been to your website or people who started to sign up but didn't complete the sign up process. Reach out to them and be like, hey, thoughts. So
Sure.
we've gotten some feedback from that. So all these little things, like for example, one of the features we added were because a lot of people were saying they weren't sure if a seat was going to be available when they got to the place. And
Okay.
some of our co-working spaces are kind of far out, like I shouldn't say far out, but like they take some time to get to. Like if you're in the Upper West Side and you got to get to Brooklyn because you have some spaces there, you don't know if the seat's going to be available when you get there. So
Right.
this is like an ongoing problem. So what we added was this feature where you can hold the seats for an hour. So you can rest assured that when you get there. So that's just an example of one of the things that popped up while we were talking to people.
No, I think that's awesome that you guys are constantly doing user testing and adding features based on user feedback. Usually, how many times do you kind of need to hear a feature request before you kind of implement that? Because I'm sure you hear feature requests all the time, and sometimes you're like, well, that might be like your edge case. That might not be good for the entire app, or or do you guys kind of have a rule with that? Or I'm always curious about that.
Right now we don't really have a hard and fast rule. We just kind of go by our gut.
Okay.
I just have a gut because I use the app myself. Like I pay the membership fee and I use the app. So like if I see people having this problem and I can kind of relate to it, like that makes sense.
Okay.
Like, or I myself is having the same problem. Pretty much every problem that people have talked about, like I have the same problem using the app.
Okay.
So like I can feel for it. I have a pretty good feel for like what we should and shouldn't do. I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but it's been working for us so far.
No,
so,
I think it makes a lot of sense to be like a user of your own platform, and I think that's super useful because then you're right. You can relate to people, and you can almost request your own features.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
definitely.
That's
I'm lucky enough to be able to use it. Yeah,
for sure. So I'm curious. Then, do you kind of have any other advice for entrepreneurs, and you kind of like maybe fell into Croissant a little bit is maybe a little bit of a stretch, but you kind of tried something, you pivoted a little, you started a new company, you went out and networked, and you basically met a bunch of people. Do you have any kind of advice for other people kind of looking to start out?
Let's see. Like starting from where? Like, do you have experience? Do you not have experience in an industry?
Could
for
be
example,
any of that.
I was talking to a guy recently at an event.
Okay.
He works for a large financial firm currently, and he's like, I want to do a startup of some sort. And he's telling me he had this idea for, I don't remember, it was like a B2C app for like image sharing or social image sharing or something like that.
Okay.
And I could tell right away it's probably, unless it's like groundbreaking and like it's I don't really know. It might succeed. I don't know. I don't want to say like it's not going to succeed, but like
Sure.
I've heard lots of people have like app ideas that are quite basic. I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not.
It's like a feature, not a business.
Yeah, like Facebook can make it a feature, for example.
Yeah.
So that's what I was thinking. But he's talking about also how he's been in the industry for a while at this financial firm, and so what I told him was, take a look at what you know, because you know this industry very well that you're in. Like, this finance industry, like, for example, fixed income and the data that he's a programmer.
Okay.
And so he knows what like the traders need, what data they need, and what the current pain points are for these traders. So
Sure.
A lot of it is like identifying pain points. And if you're in an industry for a long time, you probably know really well what the pain points are.
Sure.
So, for example, with us, we knew the pain point with working on our company was it's hard to find a spot to work on it.
Exactly.
So we were like living it. So we were lucky enough to have that experience. And so this guy, and a lot of people come from the same situation, like corporate job for a long time. They know the industry, so they know what the pain points are, and they know. So that combined with actually executing, since a lot of people also don't execute.
Sure.
If you combine that industry knowledge with executing, you'll be one of a kind, and you'll probably be setting yourself up for success. And that's just one way to be successful. It's just like a general thing I was thinking, and I think a lot of people come from that same background. So I told him I told him that.
No, I think that's really good advice. I think people forget about that, and I think part of the problem with like trying to be the next Instagram or whatever is that like never happens. And you can make a lot better business actually solving a pain point in even an industry that's not necessarily the sexiest industry, right? Like when you say finance, you're like, oh, that's not really that like cutting edge and cool, right? That's, but you can build something that solves a real pain point for people and make a really good living doing that. Mm-hmm. And I think people forget that a lot of the time, that they try to be the next Instagram. And it's like, well, Instagram's business model was sell to Google, Facebook, or Twitter. And they got lucky and sold. Like their original version was like location sharing or something. It wasn't even photos. Like they pivoted too, right? Like they weren't making money when they sold to Facebook. So I think being able to actually be profitable and build a business that makes money is what we should be focusing on. And still, instead of trying to build these like feature-based businesses and hopefully one of the big three acquires us for a lot of money, right? It's like playing the lottery.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a lot harder than you think too. It seems simple, but the engineering behind an app like Instagram, for example, is very intense. Like to beat Instagram, like another app that like seems simple but also very intense engineering is Slack. Has gained popularity.
Totally.
It just seems like a simple thing, but the engineering behind it is kind of like one of a kind. So it's like there's these little subtle things. It could be a very subtle, nuanced thing that can make or break an app. And the subtle thing is, for example, could be the engineering on some of these like simple looking software apps. Like
totally.
Yeah, you're probably not gonna. It's a lot harder than you think to make it that awesome. I mean, you can make a basic prototype working, but to make it extremely successful is another story. So.
Yeah, I think the thing is that people forget a lot of the time, and like you and I are in the space, so we understand, but the simpler it is for the user, the more work it is for the designers and developers that are actually creating this thing.
Yep. Yeah, it's really hard to make it simple.
Yeah, like it's incredibly and fast, and work on, the latest phone and the old phone and the old browsers and the new browsers. you know the pain point, right? Because I've had that at parties before. It's like, oh, you do this stuff for a living. We're going to build the next Facebook together, and we're going to go 50-50 on this. I have the idea. You execute everything. And you're like, yeah, okay, well, that's going to take like thousands of hours to build. And even if we build it, it's going to take millions of dollars to market the thing. Right? So, no, I think it's good. It's good advice. I like your approach to this whole thing. But sadly, David, we're running out of time. So maybe we'll just kind of end the show with you promoting companies and your social media links, and then I'll post these in the show notes as well.
Sure. So, I mean, the website is getcroissant, like the food.com. And Get Croissant is our Twitter handle, our Facebook handle, Instagram. We have a blog on Medium, but we just have Croissant. Yeah, okay. We're just Croissant. We landed Croissant.
Yeah, interesting. So where did you come up with Croissant? Yeah. Like, how did you guys come up with that?
Totally random. Nisha just like randomly picked it, but I mean, it stems from our background of working in coffee shops.
Sure, I kind of guessed.
Buy coffees and croissants while we were working there, and I was like, oh, I don't want to buy that stuff. Like, it's got to be an alternative. So like, we're like the alternative to buying the croissants. That's why we stuck with the name. It
awesome.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah, totally. That's cool.
Yeah, and people love the branding, so we're sticking with it.
Yeah. So. No, awesome, man. Well, thanks again for taking the time to be on the show, and we'll keep in touch, and it's been awesome. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks a lot. All
cool,
right.
man.
Have a good one.
Talk soon. Later. Bye.
Thanks for listening. You can visit past shows at buildingthefutureshow.com. If you're going to the Startup Expo on February 16th and 17th in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and want to record an episode, please contact me. The music for the show is by Electric Mantra. Check them out at electricmantra.com. Until next time, keep building the future.